You're staring at your telescope feed on October 12th, 2024, tracking what should be a routine interstellar comet, 3I/Atlas, 400 million miles away, screaming through our solar system at 87,000 miles per hour. Then your screen erupts with light, not reflected sunlight, not ice sublimation, artificial light, pulsing in patterns that make your hand shake as you reach for the emergency contact protocol. Within 72 hours, NASA's Deep Space Network confirms what you've discovered: these lights are impossible. They pulse in Fibonacci sequences 112358 mathematical language that doesn't occur in nature. They beam directionally, tracking Earth position, and the energy output. A single pulse exceeds humanity's entire nuclear arsenal. You watch as NASA goes dark for 47 days. No announcements, no papers, just encrypted communications between governments and physicists who won't return your calls. Then November 28th arrives. NASA breaks their silence. But what they reveal makes the lights seem insignificant. Because 3I/Atlas isn't obeying physics. It's making course corrections without propulsion. It's responding to our transmissions. And you have 280 days before it reaches closest approach to Earth. If discoveries like this one's that could rewrite everything we know about intelligence in the cosmos matter to you, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you catch every update as this situation develops in real time. And if you think the world needs to pay attention to what's happening 400 million miles above us right now, smash that like button. This might be the most important story you'll ever follow. You refresh the telescope data for the 100th time that night, October 12th, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Your coffee's gone cold. Your eyes burn from 6 straight hours staring at what should be routine tracking data. 3I/Atlas entered our solar system 3 weeks ago, catalogued as another interstellar comet, the third confirmed visitor from beyond our cosmic neighborhood after Oumuamua in 2017 and 2I/Borisov in 2019. Standard procedure: track its trajectory, measure its composition, watch it leave. Except 3I/Atlas isn't following the script. The first anomaly hits your screen at 11:52 p.m, a brightness spike. You assume instrument error and reboot the photometry software. The spike remains, then another, and another. Within 90 seconds, you're watching light emissions increase by 340% above baseline levels. Your hands hover over the keyboard, frozen. Because what you're seeing violates every principle of comet behavior you've studied for 15 years. Comets brighten gradually as they approach the sun, ice sublimating into spectacular tails over days or weeks. They don't strobe like distress beacons. They don't pulse with the rhythmic precision of a metronome set to 1.7-second intervals. You grab your phone. Your colleague at the European Southern Observatory answers on the first ring she's seeing it too. Mauna Kea confirms. Fast telescope in China reports identical patterns. Within 12 minutes of your first observation, 17 telescopes across 4 continents are locked onto the same impossible site. But here's what makes your stomach drop. The lights aren't coming from the comet's coma, that fuzzy cloud of gas and dust that surrounds every normal comet nucleus. They're emanating from discrete points on the solid surface, concentrated in 3 distinct locations, forming a perfect equilateral triangle when you map them in 3D space. The data streams into NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory by 1:30 a.m. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead scientist on the Near-Earth Object Program, later describes that moment in her congressional testimony. I've analysed spectral data from over 400 celestial objects. I know what sunlight reflection looks like. I know what phosphorescence looks like. I know what charged particle interactions look like. This was none of those things. She's choosing her words carefully during that testimony. You notice. Because what she's not saying is louder than what she is. The light isn't reflected. It's generated, produced from within the object itself with energy signatures that make the monitoring equipment scream warnings about calibration errors that aren't actually errors. You pull up the spectral analysis at 2:15 a.m., and this is where routine observation becomes nightmare. Every light source has a signature of fingerprint in the electromagnetic spectrum that tells you what's producing it. Sunlight reflected off ice. You see specific absorption lines from water molecules. Phosphorescent minerals, distinct emission peaks, plasma from solar-wind interaction, characteristic broadening in the spectral lines. But 3i/Atlas is producing a spectrum that doesn't match anything in our databases. The emission lines are too narrow, too pure, too artificial. It's like comparing a laser pointer to a candle flame. One is chaos. One is engineered precision. Think about the difference for a second. When you see a natural comet, you're watching sunlight bounce off trillions of ice particles and dust grains, each reflecting light in slightly different directions. The result is messy, diffuse, beautiful chaos. What you're seeing from 3i/Atlas is coherent light emission with spectral purity of 99.97%. That number should be impossible without laboratory conditions and engineered optics. Yet it's happening 400 million miles away on an object we discovered 3 weeks ago. The brightness fluctuations follow a pattern that makes every mathematician who sees it lean closer to their screen. The pulses aren't random, they're sequential. One pulse, pause, one pulse, pause, two pulses, pause, three pulses, pause, five pulses, pause, eight pulses. You recognize it immediately, the Fibonacci sequence, where each number equals the sum of the two preceding numbers. This sequence appears in nature. Sure, in spiral galaxies and nautilus shells and sunflower seed arrangements, but it doesn't appear in temporal light emissions from comets. It especially doesn't repeat in perfect 47-minute cycles with timing precision accurate to 0.003 seconds. By 4:00 a.m., you're on a video call with 23 other astronomers, and someone asks the question everyone's thinking but nobody wants to voice: what if it's a message? The silence that follows lasts 11 seconds, you count them. Doctor. Michael Torres from MIT finally responds, let's focus on what we can prove. We can prove the light is real, we can prove the pattern is mathematical, everything else is speculation we can't afford right now. But you hear what he's really saying, we need to rule out every natural explanation before we admit what this might actually be. The next 72 hours become a masterclass in systematic elimination. Solar flare interaction, wrong spectral signature. Radioactive decay from isotopes in the comet nucleus, insufficient energy output by a factor of 10,000. Piezoelectric effects from internal fracturing doesn't explain the mathematical patterns. Bioluminescence from extremophile organisms. Now you're in science fiction territory, but even that gets tested and ruled out because the energy requirements exceed anything biological chemistry could produce. What makes your hands shake isn't just what it is, it's what it isn't. Every natural explanation fails. Every conventional mechanism comes up short. And the object is still there. Still pulsing. Still following its mathematical cadence with the reliability of an atomic clock while travelling through the vacuum of space at 87,000 miles per hour. You want to know what happened next? NASA's response protocol kicked in at hour 68. Not the public one, the classified first contact scenario drafted in 1989 and updated every 5 years since. The one that begins with the phrase, in the event of confirmed non-terrestrial technological signature. Because those lights weren't just bright, they weren't just patterned, they were doing something that changed everything about what came next. Something NASA noticed in the directional beam analysis that made them shut down all public communications for 47 days. Something about where those lights were pointing and what they seemed to be tracking across the darkness between stars. The directional beam analysis comes back at hour 71, and you watch 3 senior astrophysicists from Caltech simultaneously push back from their monitors. Not the reaction you want to see from people who've spent careers studying cosmic phenomena. Doctor. Eleanor Vasquez breaks the silence. Run it again. Check the calibration on every sensor. They run it 6 more times. The results don't change. The lights from 3I/Atlas aren't radiating equally in all directions like every natural light source in the universe. They're beaming, focused, aimed. Here's what that means in practice. When our sun emits light, it sprays photons in every direction, a sphere of radiation expanding outward at 186,000 miles per second. When a comet reflects sunlight or releases gas that glows, same principle, omnidirectional emission. It's basic physics, like dropping a stone in water and watching ripples spread equally in all directions. But 3I/Atlas is producing light with a beam divergence of less than 0.4 degrees. To put that in perspective, that's tighter than most commercial laser pointers you can buy on Earth. You're looking at collimated light that's been deliberately focused and directed, coming from an object that supposedly has no technology, no purpose, no intelligence behind it. The targeting data makes it worse. Much worse. You overlay the beam direction vectors onto a star map, and your breath catches. The lights aren't pointing toward the sun, which would make sense if this were some bizarre solar-powered mechanism. They're not pointing at Jupiter or Saturn or any massive gravitational source. They're tracking Earth. Specifically, they're leading Earth's orbital position by exactly the amount needed to account for light travel time across 400 million miles of space. When the beam left 3I/Atlas 35 minutes ago, the time it takes light to cross that distance it was aimed at where Earth would be when the light arrived. Not where Earth was when the light was emitted. Think about what that requires. You need to know Earth's orbital velocity 67,000 miles per hour. You need to calculate its position along an elliptical path. You need to account for the changing distance as both objects move through space. This isn't luck. This isn't coincidence. This is precision targeting that requires knowledge of orbital mechanics and real-time tracking capability. Dr. James Morrison from the SETI Institute puts it bluntly in his leaked memo. Either we're witnessing the most improbable natural phenomenon in astronomical history, or we're looking at deliberate signal transmission. I can't determine which scenario terrifies me more. The energy calculations destroy any remaining hope for natural explanations. You're sitting with the raw data, running the numbers yourself because you need to see it with your own eyes. A single light pulse from 3I/Atlas lasting just 1.7 seconds releases approximately 2x10 circumflex 15 joules of energy. That's 4.2 petajoules. To match that output, you'd need to detonate 1 megaton of TNT every 1.7 seconds, continuously. For the 47-minute cycle duration, that's roughly 1/650 megatons. For context, the entire nuclear arsenal of every nation on Earth combined contains about 6,000 megatons. This object is burning through a quarter of humanity's total nuclear stockpile worth of energy every hour, and it's been doing it for 3 weeks straight without slowing down. Where's the energy coming from? You start with the obvious candidate radioactive decay. Naturally occurring radioisotopes can power processes for millennia. That's how we run deep space probes like Voyager. But the decay rates are known, predictable, and nowhere near sufficient. Plutonium-238, one of the most energy-dense radioisotopes we use, produces about 0.5 watts per gram to power just one pulse from 3I/Atlas. You'd need 8.4 trillion grams, 8.4 million metric tons of pure plutonium. 238 undergoing simultaneous decay. The entire object is estimated at only 1.2 million metric tons based on its gravitational interactions. The math doesn't work unless the entire comet is made of something impossible. Nuclear fusion. That's what powers the sun. So maybe there's some natural fusion process happening inside 3I/Atelus, except fusion requires immense pressure and temperature millions of degrees sustained in a confined space. Comets are cold, porous, fragile structures. They're dirty snowballs, not stellar cores. Even if you could somehow initiate fusion in a comet nucleus, the energy release would vaporize the entire object in seconds. 3I/Atelus has been running its light show for 504 hours and counting without any degradation in output or structural integrity. Antimatter comes up in the discussions around hour 89. When matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other with 100% mass-to-energy conversion, the most efficient energy source theoretically possible. Einstein's ESMC2 in its purest form. Just 1 gram of antimatter annihilating with 1 gram of matter releases 43 kilotons of energy. To power 3I/Atelus's observed output, you'd need approximately 100 kilograms of antimatter. That's actually feasible from a pure physics standpoint. But here's the problem. Antimatter doesn't exist naturally in quantities larger than a few atoms. We've created it in particle accelerators, measured in nanograms, at costs exceeding $60 trillion per gram. If 3I/Atelus is using antimatter, someone or something manufactured it, stored it, and is controlling its release with precision timing. You're not looking at nature anymore. You're looking at engineering, and the spectral purity keeps haunting you. You pull up comparison data at 3:00 a.m. on October 16th because sleep is impossible now. A typical comet's light spectrum looks like a messy scatter plot, dozens of emission lines from various molecules, each slightly smeared and broadened by thermal motion and pressure. The sodium emission from 3I/Ateles shows a spectral width of just 0.003 nanometers. For comparison, the best laboratory lasers we've built on Earth achieve widths around 0.001 nanometers under carefully controlled conditions. You're seeing laboratory quality monochromatic emission from an icy rock tumbling through space in a hard vacuum at temperatures barely above absolute zero. How Dr. Chen runs a polarization analysis on October 17th. And this detail almost gets buried in the tsunami of impossible data. But it's crucial. The light is circularly polarized, meaning the electromagnetic wave rotates as it travels. Like a corkscrew, natural light is randomly polarized. Reflected light is partially polarized. But circular polarization with 94% efficiency that requires wave plates or specific crystal structures arranged with purpose. It's a technology signature, not a natural signature. You start documenting every conventional explanation that's been proposed and systematically demolished. Crystalline structures focusing light through natural lensing. Doesn't explain the energy source or targeting. Exotic ice phases undergoing phase transitions. Doesn't produce the observed spectral characteristics. Magnetic field interactions creating plasma emissions. Wrong spectrum entirely, and no magnetic field has been detected. Each possibility crumbles under scrutiny, leaving you with a dataset that points in one direction nobody wants to acknowledge yet. The implications are stacking up like evidence in a trial. Directed beams, Earth tracking, impossible energy output, laboratory-grade spectral purity. Mathematical pulsing patterns. And you haven't even gotten to the part that made NASA invoke their first contact protocols and go silent for 47 days. Because on October 18th, someone decided to respond to the signals. And 3I/Atelus did something that shouldn't be possible for any inanimate object drifting through the cosmic void. The decision to transmit happens at 14:37 UTC on October 18th. And you're not in the room when it's made. Nobody asks the amateur astronomers who first spotted the anomaly. This is above your clearance level now, handled by a joint task force of NASA, the European Space Agency, and representatives from the International Astronomical Union. But you hear about it 6 hours later through back channels, and the details make your stomach turn. They sent a message. A deliberate structured radio transmission aimed directly at 3I/Atlas using the Deep Space Network's 70-meter antenna in Goldstone, California. The transmission protocol follows the basic structure Carl Sagan and Frank Drake designed for the Arecibo message. Back in 1974, the famous radio signal we sent toward the globular cluster M1325000 light-years away. Simple binary code representing fundamental mathematics prime numbers, atomic structures, DNA helixes, a human figure, our solar system layout. The reasoning is solid if anything intelligent is out there. Mathematics is the universal language. Prime numbers don't occur randomly in nature. They're pure logic, pure structure. The message to 3I/Atlas contains the first 25 primes, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, all the way to 97 encoded in a repeating pattern lasting 180 seconds. Then silence. Then the same sequence again. 3 repetitions total transmitted at 8. 4 gigahertz, a frequency known to astronomers as the water hole, the quietest part of the cosmic radio spectrum where intelligent civilizations might logically choose to communicate. The transmission ends at 1440 UTC. You know what the speed of light means here? Radio waves travel at the same speed, 186,000 miles per second, at 400 million miles distance. The signal takes 35 minutes and 47 seconds to reach 3I/Atlas. So if there's going to be any response, any change, it won't happen until 1516 UTC at the earliest. The world's radio telescopes swing into position, listening, the Very Large Array in New Mexico, the FAST telescope in China, Parkes Observatory in Australia. Arecibo would have been on this list, but it collapsed in 2020, a loss that hurts even more now when you need every listening dish humanity has. At 1516 UTC, nothing happens. The Fibonacci light pulses continue their 47-minute cycles, precise as a Swiss watch, unchanged. The tracking team exhales, some disappointment, mostly relief. Maybe it really is just some bizarre natural phenomenon we don't understand yet. Maybe the directed beams are a coincidence. Maybe we're seeing patterns where none exist, like ancient humans seeing gods in lightning storms. Then at 1523 UTC, 6 minutes and 13 seconds after the earliest possible response time, the light pattern changes. Dr. Jennifer Kowalski, monitoring the photometry feed at the Space Telescope Science Institute, describes this moment in her classified debrief. The Fibonacci sequence stopped mid-cycle. Just stopped. After 132 hours of metronomic precision, it terminated on pulse number 5 instead of continuing to 8. Then after a 23-second pause, it began transmitting prime numbers. You read that transcript 4 times before the implications fully hit. The sequence, it transmitted 2 pulses, 3 pulses, 5 pulses, 7 pulses, 11 pulses, 13 pulses, the exact same prime number sequence we just sent, played back to us in light instead of radio waves. The probability of this being coincidence evaporates like water on the sun. The Fibonacci sequence has 1046 possible variations in a 47-minute window, given the 1.7-second pulse timing. The odds of it randomly switching to prime numbers, specifically the same 25 primes we transmitted at precisely the moment our signal could have reached it. The statistical analysis gives you a probability of less than 1 in 10 circumflex 47. That's a 1 followed by 47 zeros. For context, there are only about 10 circumflex 80 atoms in the observable universe. you have better odds of randomly selecting the same specific atom twice from the entire cosmos than of this being coincidence. The response continues for exactly 180 seconds, the same duration as our original message. Then it stops. Returns to Fibonacci. Normal cycle resumes as if nothing happened. But everything has changed, because you've just witnessed something respond to human communication across 400 million miles of space, with a mathematical answer that demonstrates comprehension. Not just signal reflection, not just mimicry, understanding. The implications cascade through your mind like dominoes. If it understood our prime number sequence, it recognizes mathematics as communication. If it can respond with the same duration and structure, it's analyzing our transmission protocols. If it can modulate its light emissions to encode different number sequences, it has control systems sophisticated enough for real-time signal processing. You're not looking at a comet anymore. You're looking at something that thinks, receives, and responds. But here's what makes the hair stand up on your neck: the 23-second delay between when it stopped the Fibonacci sequence and when it began the prime response. Light speed delay from 3I/Atlas to Earth is 35 minutes 47 seconds. The round-trip Earth to object to Earth is 71 minutes 34 seconds, yet it responded in 6 minutes 13 seconds from the earliest possible moment it could have received our signal. That's only possible if it began formulating its response before our transmission reached it, which means it somehow knew we were about to send a message. Or it was monitoring our radio emissions in real time and detected the transmission the instant we started sending it, then responded faster than light speed delay allows. Unless the response lag isn't about signal travel time. Unless something closer is listening. Doctor. Marcus Webb from MIT's Kavli Institute runs the numbers and arrives at a calculation that changes the entire framework. If you work backward from the 6-minute 13-second response time and assume standard light speed communication, the responding entity would need to be located approximately 55 million miles away, roughly the distance between Earth and Mars at their closest approach. He publishes this in an encrypted memo that leaks 3 days later. Either 3I/Atlas has faster-than-light communication capability, or we're not communicating with the object itself. We may be communicating with something it's deployed. The second transmission attempt happens on October 19th, 0815 UTC. This time they send something more complex, the hydrogen line frequency 1420 MHz, which is the radio frequency emitted by hydrogen atoms throughout the universe. Any technological civilization studying astronomy would recognize it. The message encodes this frequency as a binary number, repeated with our mathematical constant pi 3.14159 encoded to 50 decimal places. If it truly understands mathematics, it should recognize pi as a universal constant. The response comes 7 minutes 2 seconds later. Not the pi sequence, something different. The light pulses transmit 2.71828 accurate to 50 decimal places. You recognize it immediately: Euler's number, the base of natural logarithms, another fundamental mathematical constant. It's not echoing us. It's contributing to the conversation. It's saying, I see a pi. Here's another constant you'd recognize. We speak the same mathematical language. Have you ever had that moment when you realize you're not alone in a room you thought was empty? That instant when the shadows move wrong and your survival instincts scream that something is watching you. Multiply that feeling by 400 million miles and you're close to what the monitoring teams are experiencing, because the third transmission is when everything falls apart in ways nobody predicted. On October 20th, 1400 UTC, they send images, the Arecibo message format pixelated binary images showing a human figure, our DNA structure, Earth's position in the solar system. The transmission takes 8 minutes to send all the data. The object should respond, if following previous patterns, around 1443 UTC at the earliest. at 14:38 UTC before our transmission fully completes. Before lightspeed delay allows for any response, every radio telescope aimed at 3I/Atlas simultaneously detects a massive electromagnetic pulse. Not light, not standard radio. A broadband burst across the entire radio spectrum from 300 MHz to 30 GHz, lasting 0.7 seconds, carrying an energy signature equivalent to a gamma-ray burst but in the wrong frequency range. Dr. Chen's official report states, "The emission exceeded our antenna damage thresholds. We detected saturation across all receivers. If this energy had been focused rather than omnidirectional, it could have damaged every radio telescope on the planet simultaneously." And in that pulse, buried in the noise, monitoring stations in Australia detect a structure, a pattern, 3 symbols repeating in sequences that don't match any known language, any known code, any mathematical system we've sent. The symbols get extracted and analysed, and this is where NASA stops returning phone calls, where the encrypted communications begin, where the 47-day silence starts. Because those 3 symbols, they're not in response to anything we sent. They appear to be coordinates. The coordinates decrypt on October 21st at 03:47 UTC, and the decryption team at NASA's Ames Research Center doesn't sleep for the next 38 hours. You piece together what happened from leaked emails and second-hand accounts because the official channels have gone completely dark. The 3 symbols aren't alphabetic, aren't numerical in any base system humans use. They're geometric combinations of angles and curves that repeat in specific patterns throughout the electromagnetic pulse. Dr. Raymond Choi, a cryptolinguist brought in from the National Security Agency, describes them as mathematical pictograms, closer to how we represent orbital mechanics visually than how we write language. The breakthrough comes when someone overlays the symbols onto a 3D star map. They're not coordinates in the traditional sense, not right ascension and declination like astronomers use. They're vectors. Directional arrows pointing from 3I/Atlas's current position to 3 specific locations in space. The first vector points to Kepler 442, a star system 1206 light-years away in the constellation Lyra, hosting a potentially habitable planet discovered in 2015. The second points to Proxima Centauri, a nearest stellar neighbour at 4.24 light-years, where we've detected at least 2 planets in the habitable zone. The third vector doesn't point to any star. It points to a region of space 0.8 light-years from Earth, still within our solar system's gravitational influence, but well beyond the Kuiper Belt, in the darkness where nothing should exist. Think about what it means for 3I/Atlas to transmit these specific locations. It knows our astronomical catalogue well enough to reference systems we've studied. Kepler 442 isn't a bright star you can see with the naked eye. It's a faint red dwarf we only discovered through the Kepler Space Telescope's transit method, watching for the tiny dip in brightness when planets pass in front of their host stars. To reference it requires knowledge of our detection methods, our cataloguing system, our scientific priorities. This isn't just intelligence. It's intelligence that's been watching us work. The third coordinate, the one pointing to empty space near our solar system, triggers an emergency protocol you didn't know existed. Within 6 hours of the decryption, the James Webb Space Telescope interrupts its scheduled observations and redirects toward those coordinates. The Hubble Space Telescope follows. Every infrared survey satellite we have in orbit pivots to scan that region of space with every sensor array available. What are they looking for? The official statement says verification of potential Kuiper Belt object. The leaked memos use different language. Secondary Craft Detection Protocol, October 23rd, 11:22 UTC, Webb's infrared sensors detect a thermal signature at precisely the coordinates 3e/Atelus indicated. It's faint, barely 3.2 Kelvin above the cosmic microwave background temperature of 2.7 Kelvin. That's cold enough to be natural, except natural objects at that distance don't emit heat. They absorb it. The signature is consistent with something retaining internal warmth, something that was hotter recently and is still cooling down. The object measures approximately 47 meters across, about the size of a small office building, and it's not moving according to normal orbital mechanics. It's station-keeping, maintaining position relative to Earth despite the gravitational pull from the Sun and the planets that should have disturbed its orbit decades ago. You want to know what station-keeping requires active propulsion, tiny constant adjustments using thrusters to counteract gravitational perturbations. We do this with satellites around Earth all the time. They drift out of position without periodic thruster burns, but this object is 0.8 light-years away, holding position in interstellar space, which means it's been doing this for potentially thousands of years based on thermal cooling models. The fuel requirements alone exceed anything our current technology could achieve. NASA's silence begins exactly here, at hour 72 after the first observation, October 24th, 1400 UTC. All press conferences cancel. The daily situation reports stop. Email traffic from JPL switches to encrypted channels. Phone calls go unreturned. The official NASA website removes all references to 3i/Atelus from its news section. You check the Internet Archive, and the deletion happens within a 4-hour window. This isn't standard procedure. This is information lockdown, but you can't lock down the astronomical community completely. Amateur astronomers worldwide are still tracking 3i/Atelus, still seeing the light pulses, still sharing data on forums and private message boards. Professional astronomers who aren't in the loop start asking questions publicly. Dr. Lisa Park from Seoul National University tweets on October 26th. Why has all official observation data on 3i/Atelus been classified? What changed between October 23rd and 24 inches? The tweet gets 47,000 retweets before her account suspends itself, not deleted, she clarifies later, but strongly advised to go silent by unnamed government contacts. The leaked presidential daily brief dated October 27th. 2024 gives you a glimpse into the classified meetings happening behind closed doors. The document is heavily redacted, but the visible portions are chilling. Assessment concludes non-terrestrial technological origin with high confidence, 95%. Secondary object confirms distributed surveillance network. First contact protocols inadequate for current scenario. Recommend immediate international coordination under National Security Directive 42. What's National Security Directive 42? That's the classified framework developed in 1977 dealing with potential extraterrestrial contact. Updated after the Phoenix Lights incident in 1997 and again after Oumuamua in 2017. The fact that they're invoking it means every major government now accepts what the data has been screaming: we're not alone. And something is watching us from uncomfortably close. November 2nd brings the first Intergovernment Emergency Summit. It's not publicised, you learn about it from flight manifests showing unusual diplomatic traffic. The administrator of NASA, the director of the European Space Agency, the head of Roscosmos, representatives from JAXA, CNSA, ISRO, all converging on Geneva within a 12-hour window. The meeting lasts 14 hours. No official statement releases afterward, but Canadian astronaut Dr. Jennifer Blackwood tells a colleague in an email that later leaks, "We discussed scenarios I thought belonged in science fiction novels." The working assumption now is that 3i/Atelus and the secondary object are part of a larger observational network, and we've just activated it by attempting communication. Activated, that's the word that keeps you awake at night, because if we activated something, what was it doing before? How long has it been watching? The thermal data from the secondary object suggests it's been out there for at least 600 years based on cooling curves, meaning it arrived around 1424 during the Ming dynasty, decades before Columbus sailed to the Americas. It's been watching human civilization develop from the Bronze Age through the Industrial Revolution, through 2 world wars, through the Space Age, silently collecting data while we had no idea it existed. The radio telescope arrays detect something else on November 8th that doesn't make it into any public reports, but circulates among the monitoring teams. A third electromagnetic pulse from 3I/Atlas, this time not triggered by any human transmission, spontaneous, and instead of 3 symbols, it contains 17. The decryption team works for 72 hours straight. When they crack it, the decoded message contains positional data for 14 additional objects scattered throughout our solar system, 1 in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, 2 in Trojan orbits around Jupiter's Lagrange points, 3 in the Kuiper belt, 1 in the Oort cloud at the theoretical edge of our Sun's influence. Every single object, when targeted by infrared surveys, shows the same thermal signature, the same size range, the same station-keeping behavior. We're not dealing with one visitor, we're dealing with a surveillance network that's been embedded in our solar system for potentially thousands of years, and we just announced our presence to it by sending prime numbers and pictures of DNA. Doctor. Michael Torres's classified memo dated November 12th summarizes the situation. We are a civilization that just learned to use radio, attempting to communicate with a technology sophisticated enough to maintain autonomous observation posts across interstellar distances for longer than written human history has existed. The asymmetry in technological capability suggests extreme caution in further contact attempts. But caution becomes impossible on November 15th when 3I/Atlas does something that makes the light pulses and mathematical responses seem trivial by comparison. Because if you thought station keeping was impressive, wait until you see what happens when an interstellar object moving at 87,000 miles per hour decides to change course. Not from natural gravitational influences, not from outgassing, from propulsion that shows up on every seismometer on Earth as a gravity wave signature that shouldn't exist outside of colliding black holes. The LIGO detector in Hanford, Washington picks up the gravitational wave at 0847 UTC on November 15th. LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, is designed to detect ripples in spacetime from cosmic events like colliding black holes or merging neutron stars. Events so violent they warp the fabric of reality itself. The detectors are sensitive enough to measure distortions smaller than 1,000th the diameter of a proton. When LIGO triggers, you're looking at something catastrophic happening somewhere in the universe. Except this signature isn't coming from billions of light years away. The triangulation data from LIGO Hanford, LIGO Livingston in Louisiana, and Virgo detector in Italy puts the source at 400 million miles, exactly where 3I/Atlas is located. Doctor. Kip Thorne won the Nobel Prize in 2017 for LIGO's first detection of gravitational waves from colliding black holes. He's brought into the analysis on November 15th, and his preliminary report leaks within 48 hours. The waveform does not match any known astrophysical source. The frequency is wrong. The amplitude is wrong. Most critically, the duration is wrong. Natural gravitational wave events last milliseconds. This signature sustained for 4.7 seconds with controlled modulation that suggests artificial generation. Artificial gravitational waves. Let that sink in for a moment. We've barely confirmed these things exist outside of theory, detected them for the first time in 2015, and something out there is generating them deliberately. The gravitational wave corresponds exactly with a course change in 3I/Atlas's trajectory. You're watching the orbital tracking data at 0903 UTC when the update comes through, and the numbers make you check your calculations 3 times because they can't be right. The object's velocity vector has shifted by 3.2 degrees. That sounds small until you realize what it means at cosmic scales. A 3.2 degree course change at 87,000 miles per hour requires altering the object's momentum by approximately 2.4 x 10 circumflex 17 kilogram meters per second. To put that in perspective, if you wanted to change the course of a 1.2 million ton comet by that amount using conventional rocket propulsion, you'd need to burn fuel equal to about 40% of the object's total mass. There's no exhaust plume, no outgassing, no debris trail, just a gravity wave signature and a new trajectory. Where's it going, Doctor? Sarah Chen runs the orbital projection and the results land on the task force's desks at 11:30 UTC. The new trajectory brings 3I/Atlas's closest approach to Earth from 280 million miles to 94 million miles, still well outside Earth's orbit, but close enough to pass near Mars's orbital path. The approach date shifts forward by 23 days. It's not heading toward us, but it's definitely adjusting its path to get a better look, like a detective moving closer to a crime scene, repositioning for a clearer view. The propulsion mechanism becomes the obsession of every physicist with security clearance. How do you move a million-ton object without visible thrust? The leaked NSA technical assessment dated November 18th lists 5 theoretical possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. First mass driver technology, using electromagnetic acceleration to eject material at relativistic speeds. Problem: no ejected mass detected, and the energy requirements would create observable radiation. Second solar sail technology using light pressure. Problem: wrong direction relative to the Sun, and insufficient surface area based on the object's dimensions. Third, nuclear pulse propulsion, detonating bombs behind the craft for thrust. Problem: no radiation signature, no thermal bloom, no debris field. Fourth, gravity manipulation through space-time warping, essentially creating a localized warp bubble that moves space itself rather than moving through space. This is Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive concept from 1994, purely theoretical, requiring exotic matter with negative mass that we're not even sure exists. The energy requirements would exceed the mass energy of Jupiter, yet the gravitational wave signature is consistent with space-time distortion. If 3I/Atlas is using gravity manipulation, it's wielding technology that makes our most advanced physics look like stone tools. Fifth, quantum vacuum thruster, exploiting zero-point energy fluctuations in empty space. This edges into physics that's still controversial, still debated, still unproven in laboratories. But if you could harness the quantum foam, the constant creation and annihilation of virtual particles that happens everywhere in vacuum, you'd have access to functionally unlimited energy. Doctor. Harold White at NASA's Advanced Propulsion Lab has been studying this for years. Published papers on it, runs small-scale experiments. His classified consultation memo from November 20th states, if the object is utilizing quantum vacuum energy, it represents a technological capability gap of potentially 1000 plus years relative to current human achievement. 1,000 years. Think about what humanity looked like 1,000 years ago, 1024 AD. No electricity, no germ theory, no telescope, no understanding of gravity or planetary motion. Now imagine showing someone from 1024 a smartphone, an MRI machine, a space shuttle. That's the gap we might be looking at, except in reverse. We're the medieval peasants staring at technology we can't begin to comprehend. The second course correction happens on November 22nd at 14:15 UTZ. Another gravity wave pulse. 3.9 seconds duration this time. Another trajectory shift. 1.8 degrees. The new orbital projection puts the closest approach at 89 million miles, intersecting with the orbital plane where Earth will be in 237 days, June 10th, 2025. It's not targeting Earth's current position, it's targeting where Earth will be. That requires predictive modelling of our orbital mechanics months in advance. Accounting for gravitational perturbations from the Moon, from Jupiter, from every massive body in the solar system, our best supercomputers struggle with that level of precision. 3i/Atlas is doing it while travelling through space, and apparently having enough computational power left over to chat with us in prime numbers. Dr. Marcus Webb updates his analysis on November 24th. The object is demonstrating real-time trajectory optimization based on dynamic target tracking. This is autonomous navigation far exceeding current Earth technology. The Apollo missions to the Moon required constant Earth-based calculations and course corrections. This object is doing it independently across interplanetary distances. Independent, autonomous, not controlled from some distant homeworld, but making decisions on its own. You're not just looking at advanced technology, you're potentially looking at artificial intelligence that's been operating independently for centuries or longer. The international response fractures along predictable lines. The leaked UN Security Council transcript from November 26th shows Russia advocating for aggressive active measures, sending a probe to intercept and study 3i/Atlas up close. China suggests continued passive observation with military readiness protocols. The United States proposes a multinational research initiative focusing on understanding the propulsion system. The European Union pushes for establishing formal communication protocols under the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which nobody designed with active alien contact in mind. India's representative asked the question everyone's thinking but not saying, what if it's hostile? Hostile. That word hangs in the air like radiation, contaminating every discussion that follows. Because here's what you know, 3i/Atlas has technology to manipulate gravity, to generate artificial gravitational waves, to perform course corrections that violate our understanding of propulsion physics. If it wanted to harm Earth, what could we do to stop it? Our most powerful weapons are nuclear missiles that take 30 minutes to reach targets on Earth. This object is maneuvering across 400 million miles of space using technology we can't explain. Doctor? Chen's classified risk assessment dated November 28th concludes, in any hostile scenario, Earth possesses zero defensive capability against demonstrated technology level. Deterrence through mutually assured destruction is non-viable when the technology asymmetry is this extreme. Zero defensive capability. You're reading those words in a NASA document describing humanity's options if something goes wrong. It's the strategic equivalent of cavemen with spears facing an aircraft carrier. But here's the thing that keeps the scientists from complete panic if 3i/Atlas wanted to harm us. Why wait? Why observe for potentially thousands of years? Why respond to our mathematical messages? Why give us advance notice of its approach by changing course so obviously we couldn't miss it? Unless the course changes aren't about us at all. Unless something else is happening that we haven't figured out yet. Because on November 30th, the Hubble Space Telescope captures images of 3i/Atlas that show something emerging from the object's surface. Something that wasn't there before. Something that looks disturbingly like it's being constructed in real time while hurtling through space at 87,000 miles per hour. The Hubble images land on your screen at 0733 UTC on November 30th. And you spend the first 10 minutes convinced the telescope's optics have degraded. Hubble's been in orbit since 1990, 34 years of exposure to solar radiation, micrometeorite impacts, thermal cycling that would destroy most equipment, but the calibration data checks out. The secondary mirror alignment is perfect. The wide-field camera 3 is functioning within normal parameters. What you're seeing is real, and it's impossible. 3i/Atlas's surface is changing, not eroding, not fragmenting like comets do when solar heat vaporizes their icy exteriors, building, growing. The time-lapse comparison between images taken November 15th and November 30th shows a structure emerging from what was previously smooth terrain on the object's northern hemisphere. It's angular, geometric, definitely not natural ice formations. The structure measures approximately 340 meters long and 80 meters wide, roughly the size of 3 football fields placed end to end. And it's growing at a rate of about 12 meters per day, Doctor. Alexei Volkov from the Russian Academy of Sciences runs a materials analysis based on spectral reflection data, and his report dated December 2nd contains a sentence that gets quoted in every subsequent briefing. The surface albedo and spectral signature are consistent with refined metallic alloys, possibly titanium-aluminum composite or carbon nanotube matrices. This is not naturally occurring material. This is manufacturing in space, while travelling at 87,000 miles per hour, without any visible industrial infrastructure, power plants, or raw material sources. How do you build something when you're hurtling through vacuum with nothing around you but scattered hydrogen atoms? The answer comes from analysing what 3i/Atlas has been doing for the past 6 weeks. You piece it together from the outgassing data, these brief jets of material that astronomers initially thought were normal comet behaviour, except the composition is wrong. Normal comets release water vapour, carbon dioxide, simple organic compounds. 3i/Atlas has been venting pure elements silicon, iron, nickel, carbon in various allotropic forms, not mixed together like cosmic debris, refined, separated, processed. Doctor. Jennifer Kowalski's spectroscopic analysis shows isotope ratios that don't match any solar system source. These elements didn't come from our sun's formation. They're interstellar material, collected during 3i/Atlas's journey through space, refined through processes we can only guess at, and now being assembled into something new. Think about the engineering required. You need mining capabilities to extract raw material from captured interstellar dust and gas. You need refinement processes to separate elements, essentially a flying smelter operating in hard vacuum. You need fabrication technology to shape refined materials into structural components. You need assembly systems to put it all together while maintaining precise positioning despite the object's rotation and velocity. We've talked about doing this asteroid mining, in situ resource utilization for deep space missions, but we're decades away from even attempting it. 3i/Atlas is doing it as casually as you might change clothes. The structure's purpose becomes the subject of intense speculation. The leaked Department of Defense assessment dated December 5th lists 6 possibilities ranked by probability. Most likely sensor array deployment for enhanced observation capabilities. Second communication relay to transmit data back to its origin point. Third propulsion system upgrade for additional course corrections. Fourth defensive countermeasures in case of hostile action. Fifth sample collection apparatus for gathering Earth atmospheric or biological data. Sixth, listed with low probability but catastrophic risk weapons platform. That 6th option keeps military strategists awake, because what looks like a sensor array could just as easily be a directed energy weapon. What appears to be a communication relay might be a targeting system. The structural configuration shows focusing elements parabolic curves, precise angular geometries that could concentrate energy into beams. Dr. Harold White's consultation on potential threat assessment concludes, any civilization capable of gravity manipulation and sustained interstellar travel possesses energy control sufficient to weaponize radiation across any portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. Defensive protocols are limited to evacuation and hardening of critical infrastructure. December 8th brings the discovery that changes threat assessment calculations. The James Webb Space Telescope detects thermal emissions from the construction site heat signatures indicating active energy expenditure. The temperature readings fluctuate between 340 and 380 Kelvin, roughly the temperature of a warm oven. That's absurdly hot for an object in deep space where ambient temperature is barely 3 Kelvin. Where's the heat coming from? The energy analysis gives you numbers that make previous calculations look conservative. To maintain those temperatures while radiating heat into the near absolute zero of space requires approximately 8.7 megawatts of continuous power input. For comparison, that's enough to power about 7,000 average American homes. 8.7 megawatts running continuously for 15 days of construction so far equals roughly 3.1 terajoules of total energy expenditure. Add that to the energy from the light pulses, the gravitational wave generation, the propulsion burns, and you're looking at a power budget that exceeds the total electrical generation capacity of most countries. The power source remains completely undetected, no fusion signature, no fission products, no antimatter annihilation gamma rays. It's as if the energy appears from nowhere, which points back to that terrifying possibility: quantum vacuum energy extraction, tapping into the zero-point field that permeates all of space. The construction accelerates on December 12th. Time-lapse imaging shows the structure growing at 18 meters per day now, 50% faster than before. The geometry becomes more complex subsidiary appendages extending from the main body, articulated joints that suggest movable components, what looks disturbingly like apertures or ports along the sides. Doctor. Chen's team runs 3D reconstruction models, and one of the junior analysts notices something that gets flagged immediately. The structure is oriented specifically, not random, not following the object's rotation. It's locked onto a fixed point in space, maintaining its alignment despite 3 ice/atlases tumbling motion. Where's it pointing? You overlay the structural axis onto star charts and the answer makes your blood run cold. The structure is aimed directly at Earth. Not Earth's current position, Earth's position on June 10th, 2025, when 3/Atlas makes its closest approach. The pointing accuracy is within 0.03 degrees, precision that requires active tracking and constant adjustment. Is not just watching us, it's preparing something specific for when it arrives. What would you do if you saw someone building something and aiming it at your house? The military response planning begins in earnest on December 14th. The leaked Joint Chiefs of Staff memo outlines contingency operations. Operation Sentinel focuses on enhanced surveillance and early warning systems. Operation Guardian involves positioning orbital assets for potential defensive action. Operation Lighthouse, the one that makes scientists recoil, proposes a kinetic interceptor mission, basically trying to hit 3 ice/Atlas with a high-velocity impactor to disrupt whatever it's building. Doctor. Lisa Park leads the scientific opposition to Lighthouse in a scathing letter to the UN Secretary-General dated December 16th. Attacking an object demonstrating clear evidence of advanced intelligence would be the most catastrophic mistake in human history. We have no idea if 3/Atlas is alone or part of a larger fleet. We don't know its defensive capabilities. We don't know if it's autonomous or controlled remotely. An unprovoked attack could trigger retaliation we cannot survive. She's right, but you can also understand the military perspective. Waiting to find out if it's hostile might mean waiting until it's too late to respond. The debate becomes moot on December 18th when 3 ice/Atlas does something that renders the entire discussion obsolete. Because after 67 days of silence following our last transmission attempt, it initiates contact again. not with light pulses, not with mathematical sequences, with something that makes every previous communication look primitive, a structured radio transmission in binary code that takes 47 minutes to receive and, when decoded, contains detailed specifications for a device we're supposed to build, instructions from something 89 million miles away, telling us how to construct technology we've never imagined, for purposes it hasn't explained yet. And according to the embedded timeline in the transmission, we have exactly 174 days to build it before something arrives that will change everything. The transmission begins at 1947 UTC on December 18th, detected simultaneously by the Allen Telescope Array in California, the Parkes Observatory in Australia, and the FAST Telescope in China. You're monitoring the data stream in real time, watching binary code scroll across your screen at a rate of 4096 bits per second slow by modern internet standards. But remarkably fast for interplanetary communication. The signal strength is powerful, focused, deliberate. This isn't a scattered broadcast hoping someone might be listening. This is a directed message to Earth, transmitted with enough power that even amateur radio astronomers with backyard dishes are picking it up. The first thing the decryption team notices is the header structure. The transmission opens with a mathematical preamble, the same prime number sequence we sent back in October, followed by the atomic number of hydrogen 1, then carbon 6, nitrogen 7, oxygen 8. It's establishing a reference system, confirming that what follows will use atomic elements as building blocks for communication. Smart. Universal. Any technological civilization would understand atomic structure. Then the actual specifications begin, and Dr. Raymond Choi's decryption team realizes they're looking at engineering blueprints. The device schematic unfolds over 47 minutes of continuous transmission, arriving in layered segments like a sophisticated CAD file being downloaded. First comes the overall geometry, a sphere 12 meters in diameter with a central chamber measuring 4 meters across. Then the material specifications, described in terms of atomic composition alloys requiring precise ratios of titanium 22, aluminum 13, and something identified only by atomic number 115, which doesn't exist in nature and wasn't even synthesized in laboratories until 2003, and then only for milliseconds. The specifications call for 847 kilograms of this element, 115 in stable form. That's the first impossibility in a blueprint full of them. Dr. Robert Lazar claimed in 1989 that element 115 was used in alien propulsion systems at Area 51, a claim universally dismissed by scientists at the time. The element was officially synthesized at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Russia in 2003, confirmed by additional experiments in 2013 and named Moscovium in 2016. It's intensely unstable, decaying in less than a second. The fact that 3I/8less is casually specifying stable element 115 as a construction material means either they've solved isotope stabilization problems that we consider physically impossible, or there are isotopes of heavy elements we haven't discovered yet. Either way, we can't build this device because we don't have the primary material. But the schematic continues. The central chamber contains what the decryption team identifies as a quantum entanglement array 12 crystals arranged in a dodecahedron configuration, each crystal specified down to its molecular lattice structure. The crystals need to be grown from pure silicon carbide doped with specific impurities nitrogen, phosphorus, and trace amounts of europium. The lattice spacing must be accurate to within 1 angstrom, that's 1/10,000,000th of a meter, the approximate diameter of a hydrogen atom. This is precision manufacturing at the atomic level, requiring techniques we've only begun to explore in cutting-edge semiconductor facilities, What's the device supposed to do? That's the terrifying part. The transmission includes operational parameters, but no explanation of function. Doctor. Marcus Webb analyses the energy flow diagrams, and his preliminary assessment dated December 19th states, "The device appears designed to generate a localized space-time distortion field with a radius of approximately 40 meters. The energy input requirements suggest a sustained wormhole or Einstein-Rosen bridge, essentially a tear in space-time connecting two distant points. If functional, this would represent faster-than-light communication, or possibly even transportation. A wormhole. They're sending us instructions to build a wormhole generator." You read that sentence in a NASA document written by physicists with decades of experience. People who've spent careers studying general relativity, and they're treating this like a legitimate engineering challenge rather than science fiction. Because the mathematics in the transmission checks out, every equation, every field calculation, every quantum mechanical specification is internally consistent with known physics. It's just applied in ways we never imagined possible. The timeline embedded in the transmission is explicit: 174 days until initialization event, with construction milestones marked at 30-day intervals, December 18th to June 10th. 2025, exactly when 3 I/Anomalous reaches its closest approach to Earth. The correlation is obvious. They want us to build this device and have it operational when they arrive. But why Doctor? Sarah Chen's classified memo to the National Security Council dated December 20th frames the central dilemma. We face a choice between three interpretations. First, this is a communication device allowing dialogue between civilizations. Second, this is a Trojan horse, we build it, and it does something catastrophic we don't understand. Third, this is a test to determine our technological capability and willingness to cooperate with external intelligence. The international response fractures immediately. The European Space Agency wants to attempt construction, arguing this represents humanity's best chance to establish meaningful contact. Russia's Federal Space Agency proposes building the device under controlled conditions on the Moon, away from Earth in case something goes wrong. China suggests building a partial version to study the principles without completing the full assembly. The United States Pentagon issues a classified directive on December the 22nd. No construction of alien design technology on US soil or in facilities under US jurisdiction. Risk assessment indicates unacceptable probability of weaponization or uncontrolled physics phenomena. But someone's going to build it. You can feel that certainty settling over the scientific community like snow. When you give engineers blueprints, they want to build. When you give scientists a mystery, they want to solve it. The leaked email exchange between Dr. Lisa Park and Dr. Alexei Volkov dated December 23rd shows them already discussing material procurement and facility requirements. Park writes, "We've been searching for extraterrestrial intelligence for 70 years. Now it's reached out and given us a direct pathway to contact. Refusing to build this would be humanity's greatest failure of nerve in history. The element 115 problem becomes the focus of frantic research. Dr. Harold White contacts every particle physics laboratory in the world, searching for data on heavy element synthesis. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. The GSI Helmholtz Center for Heavy Ion Research in Germany reports they've been experimenting with californium-252 neutron bombardment of americium-243 targets, creating element 115 isotopes with half-lives extending to 220 milliseconds, still nowhere near stable, but longer than previous attempts. Their theoretical models suggest that isotope 291 of moscovium might have a half-life measured in years rather than milliseconds if they could synthesize it. That's the isotope the transmission specifies. Can we make it? The German team estimates they'd need approximately 18 months of continuous particle accelerator time, costs exceeding $400 million, and success probability below 15%. You don't have 18 months. You have 174 days, now counting down to 170. Doctor, Chen proposes an alternative on December 27th. We inform 3I/Atlas that we understand the blueprint, but lack the technological capability to manufacture the specified materials. We request either modified specifications using available elements or direct provision of the element 115 component. The response transmission goes out on December 28th at 1500 UTC. Simple binary message. Blueprint received. Material constraints identified. Request specification modification or material assistance. Humanity willing to construct. Unable to source element 115 in required quantities. It's humble, honest, and potentially dangerous. You're admitting technological inferiority to an intelligence that might view weakness as exploitable. The message travels at light speed across 87 million miles. 3I/Atlas has adjusted course again, now only 87 million miles distant and closing. Round-trip communication time 15 minutes 32 seconds. The response arrives in 16 minutes 8 seconds. Not just acknowledgement, a complete revised blueprint. Element 115 specifications replaced with a complex superconducting ceramic matrix using yttrium barium copper oxide. Achievable with current Earth technology if you can maintain temperatures at 93 Kelvin. The quantum entanglement array simplified to 8 crystals instead of 12. The central chamber enlarged to 6 meters to accommodate less efficient energy coupling. It's still wildly advanced, still pushing the boundaries of what our best facilities can manufacture. But it's possible. They've adjusted their design to match our capabilities. Think about what that means. They understand our technology level precisely enough to redesign their device in under 16 minutes, accounting for our materials science limitations, our manufacturing tolerances, our energy production capabilities. They've been watching us that closely, learning that thoroughly. Dr. Jennifer Kowalski's analysis dated December the 29th concludes, the revised specifications suggest long-term observation of Earth's technological progress. They know what we can build because they've watched us build it. This is not first contact. This is continuation of surveillance that's been ongoing for decades at minimum. The construction authorization comes through on December 31st, 2024, signed by representatives from 23 nations and authorized under Emergency UN Resolution 2847. Facility location: the Large Hadron Collider Complex at CERN in Switzerland. Neutral territory with the advanced manufacturing and quantum physics infrastructure needed. Timeline 160 days to completion. Budget $12 billion in international contributions. Project name Gateway. You're watching humanity commit to building a device designed by an alien intelligence. With no guarantee it does what we hope and no way to stop what happens when we turn it on. And the scientific teams haven't even begun to address the bigger question that everyone's carefully avoiding if this is a communication device. Who or what is going to be on the other end when we activate it? Construction begins on January 8th, 2025, and you're watching a live feed from CERN as engineers in clean suits wheel the first components into the assembly chamber. The scale is staggering. You're looking at a 12-meter diameter sphere that will eventually house technology designed by something that's been crossing interstellar space for potentially thousands of years. Dr. Elena Vasquez leads the technical team, and her first progress report contains a sentence that captures the surreal nature of this project. We are building a device we don't fully understand, using physics we're still learning, to specifications provided by an intelligence whose motives remain unknown. This is either humanity's boldest moment or our most catastrophic mistake. The titanium-aluminum alloy sphere takes 23 days to fabricate. You're working with aerospace-grade materials, the same stuff used in the SR-71 Blackbird and modern fighter jets, but machined to tolerances typically reserved for semiconductor manufacturing. The sphere's inner surface needs to be smooth within 50 nanometers. That's rougher than a silicon wafer, but smoother than any aircraft component. Why such precision? The blueprints specify that electromagnetic field uniformity depends on surface regularity. Any irregularities larger than 50 nanometers create field distortions that could, according to the calculations, destabilize the space-time geometry, which sounds exactly like the kind of problem you want to avoid when building a potential wormhole. The quantum crystal growth begins simultaneously in facilities across 3 continents. Growing crystals sounds simple. You've probably done it in high school science class with sugar or salt. But these aren't simple crystals. Silicon carbide with nitrogen and phosphorus dopants at concentrations of 1 part per billion, arranged in exactly the right lattice positions. Dr. Marcus Webb oversees the growth process at MIT's Materials Research Laboratory, and his February 3rd status report describes the challenge. We're attempting to place individual atoms in predetermined positions within a crystal matrix. Current semiconductor technology achieves this with error rates around 1 in 10,000. The specifications require error rates below 1 in 10 million. We're pushing the absolute limits of atomic scale manufacturing. The crystals fail repeatedly. The first batch on February 12th shows lattice defects visible under electron microscopy dislocations, where atoms sit in the wrong positions, creating stress points that would shatter the crystal under operational loads. The second batch on February 19th achieves better structural integrity, but the dopant concentrations are off by 3%, which according to the operational parameters would reduce quantum entanglement efficiency by 47%. Unacceptable. The revised specifications from 3i/Atelus don't include safety margins or tolerances. Everything is precise, absolute, non-negotiable. Either you build it exactly right or it doesn't work, and you have no idea what doesn't work might actually mean when you're manipulating space-time. Meanwhile, the skeptics are getting louder. Doctor. Robert Morrison publishes an open letter in Nature on February 24th, signed by 347 scientists from 52 countries. We are proceeding with Project Gateway without adequate risk assessment, without understanding the device's true function, without considering the possibility of deception. History shows that less technologically advanced civilizations suffer catastrophically when contacted by more advanced ones. We may be building the instrument of our own subjugation. It's a valid concern. You think about the Aztecs welcoming Cortés, the Native Americans trading with European colonizers, civilizations that didn't recognize the threat until it was too late. But the construction continues because stopping feels more dangerous than proceeding. Dr. Sarah Chen articulates this during a tense UN briefing on March 2nd. 3i/Atlas has demonstrated the capability to alter trajectories, generate gravity waves, and build structures in space using technology we can't replicate. If their intent is hostile, they don't need us to build Gateway to harm us. They could simply accelerate to impact velocity and hit Earth with kinetic energy exceeding every nuclear weapon ever built. The fact that they're communicating, adjusting designs for our capabilities, and waiting for us to respond suggests they want cooperation, not conquest. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Kyoto University's Quantum Materials Lab achieved successful crystal growth on March 8th using a modified molecular beam epitaxy technique. Instead of growing crystals from solution like traditional methods, She's depositing atoms layer by layer in an ultra-high vacuum chamber, essentially printing the crystal structure atom by atom. It takes 18 days to grow a single crystal, measuring 40 millimeters across. The gateway device requires 8 of them. You're looking at 144 days of growth time. And you'd only have 94 days until the June 10th deadline. The solution parallelize. 8 facilities worldwide begin growing crystals simultaneously, each one following Tanaka's exact protocols, racing against a deadline set by something approaching from 62 million miles away. The superconducting ceramic assembly begins on March 15th. Yttrium barium copper oxide sounds innocuous until you realize you're working with materials that must be cooled to 93 Kelvin minus 180 degrees Celsius to function. At room temperature, it's a ceramic. At 93 Kelvin, it becomes a superconductor with 0 electrical resistance, able to carry massive currents without energy loss. The gateway specifications call for superconducting cables carrying 50,000 amperes, enough current to power a small city, flowing without resistance through channels barely thicker than pencil lead. Dr. Alexei Volkov's team tests the first prototype on March 22nd, and the results are both promising and terrifying. The ceramic handles the current load perfectly, but when they ramp up to operational voltage, the magnetic field generated measures 15 Tesla, about 300,000 times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. That's enough magnetic force to rip the iron out of your blood if you stood too close. April brings the integration phase, and this is where the true alien nature of the design becomes impossible to ignore. The 8 quantum crystals mount in a dodecahedron frame, a 12-sided geometric solid, where each crystal aims toward the center chamber. When you power them up sequentially, something happens that makes every physicist in the room step backward. The crystals begin glowing with pale blue light that shouldn't be possible. This isn't thermal radiation or fluorescence. Dr. Jennifer Kowalski's spectrometer analysis shows the light has a spectral signature identical to Cherenkov radiation, the blue glow that appears when particles travel faster than light through a medium. Except there are no particles here, no medium, just 8 crystals at 93 Kelvin arranged in specific geometry. The glow is spontaneous, unexplained, and according to every physics textbook you've ever read, impossible. The anomalies multiply during testing. On April 17th, technicians report chronometer discrepancies in the assembly chamber, atomic clocks disagreeing with external time references by 0.003 seconds over a 2-hour period. Einstein's general relativity predicts this kind of time dilation near massive gravitational sources or at relativistic velocities. But the gateway device is stationary, and the gravitational field is Earth normal, yet time inside the chamber is provably running slower than time outside. Dr. Webb's analysis concludes, "We're seeing space-time distortion effects at 15% power levels. The device is already warping the fabric of reality, and we haven't even activated the full operational protocol." May 3rd marks the first complete system test. All 8 crystals powered, superconducting ceramics at operational temperature, electromagnetic containment fields active. The test plan calls for 30-second activation at 25% power at T-3 seconds. Dr. Vasquez gives the authorization, and you're watching the control room feed when the crystals synchronize. The blue glow intensifies. The magnetic field readings spike to 22 Tesla, and something appears in the center chamber. Not solid, not gas, a distortion like looking through heated air, but geometric, structured, rotating. It lasts 8 seconds before the safety protocols trigger shutdown, but in those 8 seconds, every sensor in the facility detects something that shouldn't exist, a stable region of negative energy density. the theoretical exotic matter required for wormhole stabilization according to Alcubierre's equations. You created negative energy for 8 seconds in a chamber in Switzerland. Humanity generated something that physics says might not naturally exist in the universe. The implications cascade through your mind if we can create negative energy. We can stabilize wormholes, enable faster-than-light travel, manipulate space-time itself. This isn't just a communication device. It's a doorway to physics we didn't know existed, handed to us by something that's mastered it so completely they can redesign it for our technological kindergarten level. But the test reveals a problem. The energy consumption exceeds projections by 340%. Running Gateway at full power for the specified 47-minute initialization protocol would require 2.4 gigawatts more electricity than a medium-sized city uses in a day. CERN's power infrastructure can't support that load. They need to connect Gateway directly to the French electrical grid. And even then, you're looking at brownouts across Geneva and potential grid instability affecting millions of people. The Swiss government approves the connection on May 15th with a single condition. This test happens exactly once. On June 10th, 2025, when 3I/Anomalous reaches closest approach and whatever is supposed to happen will happen. One test, one chance, and 26 days to finalize a device that's already rewriting physics textbooks before it's even fully activated. The final crystal installation's complete on May 20th. The electromagnetic shielding passes safety certification on May 27th. The power grid integration finishes on June 3rd. Everything is ready. 3I/Anomalous is now 21 million miles away, decelerating another impossible maneuver using that gravity manipulation technology, positioning itself for precise alignment with Earth on June 10th at 1447 UTC. And nobody knows what comes through when we open the door. June 8th, 2025, 48 hours before activation, and the scientific community fractures into 3 distinct camps. You're watching the debates unfold across encrypted video conferences, leaked emails, and increasingly desperate op-eds in scientific journals. The first camp, led by Dr. Sarah Chen and approximately 40% of Project Gateway personnel. Advocates proceeding exactly as planned. Their argument: we've come too far, invested too much, and learned too much to stop now. Backing out would demonstrate humanity's inability to engage with superior intelligence, a failure that might doom any future contact attempts. Chen's classified briefing to world leaders on June 8th contains a sentence that encapsulates this perspective. First contact is not about us choosing the moment. It's about us choosing our response when the moment chooses us. The second camp. Roughly 35% of the scientific team, including Dr. Robert Morrison, wants postponement pending additional safety protocols. Morrison's alternative proposal, submitted June 7th, delay activation by 6 months. Build a second gateway device at a remote facility he suggests Antarctica or the lunar surface and test that version first while keeping the CERN installation as backup. His reasoning is sound. We're activating alien technology without understanding its full function, without backup systems, without any reversibility if something goes catastrophically wrong. This violates every engineering safety principle humans have developed. But postponement has a fatal flaw. 3I/Anomalous will be at closest approach on June 10th. Miss that window, and the object continues its trajectory out of the solar system. The next opportunity for optimal alignment orbital mechanics calculations suggest 847 years. The third camp, about 25% including Dr. Jennifer Kowalski, advocates something more radical: proceed with activation but under modified protocols. Kowalski's proposal, submitted June 6th, suggests running Gateway at 60% power instead of full capacity. establishing what she calls conservative contact parameters. The logic: if the device is truly a communication portal, it should function even at reduced power. Yeah. If it's something else, something dangerous operating at 60% might prevent full activation of whatever threat scenario skeptics fear. Doctor. Elena Vasquez reviews this proposal and rejects it within 4 hours. The specifications from 3i/Atlas don't include partial operation modes. We either run the protocol exactly as transmitted, or we're essentially building something different than what they designed. Unknown consequences either way. The public knows none of this internal conflict. The official story released to media on June 5th describes Gateway as an advanced communication relay for deep space signal detection. Part of ongoing SETI research is not technically a lie, but it's so stripped of context that it might as well be fiction. The real briefings, the ones shown to heads of state, military commanders, and senior scientists, paint a very different picture. You've seen excerpts from these classified sessions. They discuss containment procedures if the portal becomes unstable. They outline evacuation protocols for Geneva and surrounding regions if energy releases exceed projections. They detail military response options if something hostile emerges. That last scenario keeps appearing in Pentagon assessments, despite scientists insisting it's unlikely. As General Patrick Thornton states in his June 7th risk evaluation, hope is not a strategy. We need kinetic response capability on standby even if probability of hostile contact is below 5%. June 9th, 24 hours before activation. The final system diagnostics run overnight, and you're monitoring the data streams remotely because CERN has restricted physical access to essential personnel only. The crystal alignment checks out all 8 quantum crystals showing coherent entanglement signatures with correlation factors above 0.98 essentially. They're locked together in quantum states despite no physical connection between them. This shouldn't be possible at room temperature, let alone at 93 Kelvin. Quantum entanglement typically requires isolation from any environmental interference, achieved only in carefully controlled laboratory conditions. Yet these crystals maintain entanglement while embedded in electromagnetic fields, superconducting currents, and magnetic flux densities that should destroy any quantum coherence instantly. The superconducting ceramics test at 0330 UTC on June 9th, carrying full rated current 50,000 amperes, flowing through channels cooled to -180 Celsius. The magnetic containment fields hold stable at 22 Tesla. The power consumption at this test level 840 megawatts, roughly the output of one large nuclear reactor. And this is just the standby configuration. Full activation will triple that demand. The Swiss Federal Office of Energy confirms the grid connection at 0715 UTC. Power allocation approved for 47-minute draw not to exceed 2.8 gigawatts. Swiss-French interconnection capacity sufficient to handle load. Backup diesel generators on standby if grid instability detected. 3i/Atlas makes its final course correction at 11:22 UTC on June 9th. Another gravity wave pulse detected by LIGO briefer this time. Only 1.3 seconds, but the trajectory adjustment is precise. The object is now in perfect orbital alignment with Earth, distance 21 million miles and holding position relative to our planet's motion. Not approaching, not receding, matching our orbital velocity exactly, which requires continuous thrust compensation against the Sun's gravity. Dr. Marcus Webb's analysis. It's parking, station keeping at optimal distance for whatever interaction is planned. The precision suggests real-time tracking of Earth's position accurate to within kilometers across 21 million miles of space. The structure 3i/Atlas has been building now designated Contact Array Alpha by NASA completes construction at 1647 UTC on June 9th. The final Hubble images show an assembly measuring 480 meters along its primary axis, roughly the length of 5 football fields. The geometric configuration resembles nothing in human architecture, fractal patterns repeating at different scales. Surfaces that seem to shift between reflective and absorptive depending on viewing angle. Apertures that might be sensors or emitters or something entirely different. Doctor. Alexei Volkov's spectroscopic analysis detects active power emissions from the structure. Thermal signatures consistent with 15 megawatt continuous draw, whatever that array does. It's now operational and waiting. June 10th, 2025, 1447 UTC, T-0 hours to gateway activation. You're watching 6 different live feeds, the CERN control room, the gateway chamber interior, 3 I/Atlas through Hubble, seismic monitoring stations, electromagnetic spectrum analyzers, and gravitational wave detectors. The activation sequence begins at 1400 UTC, 47 minutes to ramp up all systems to operational levels. Then the final initialization protocol. Doctor. Elena Vasquez sits at the master control station, surrounded by 23 monitoring specialists and backup operators for every critical system. Her hands hover over the controls, and she speaks into the recorded log. June 10th, 2025, 1400 UTC, initiating Project Gateway activation sequence. God help us if we're making a mistake. The power draw begins gradually, 200 megawatts, 400, 600 climbing in smooth increments as the superconducting ceramics accept increased current. The crystals begin their characteristic blue glow at 1408 UTC, intensifying as power levels rise. At 1415 UTC, the time dilation effects appear, atomic clocks in the chamber running 0.007 seconds slow compared to external references. At 1423 UTC, the negative energy density signature appears, that exotic matter state that shouldn't exist but does, growing stronger as the field equations balance. By 1430 UTC, you're watching space-time visibly warp in the center chamber. A spherical distortion maybe 2 meters across, rotating slowly, its surface shimmering with interference patterns like oil on water but geometric, mathematical, precise. At 1438 UTC, something changes. The distortion suddenly stabilizes, stops rotating and begins emitting light, not blue like the crystals, but white light tinged with colors you don't have names for. Wavelengths your eyes shouldn't be able to perceive but somehow can. Doctor. Webb checks the spectrometer readings. We're detecting electromagnetic emissions across the entire spectrum from extreme ultraviolet through visible light into infrared, plus frequencies that fall between the standard spectral lines. That shouldn't be physically possible. Photons have discrete energies. They can't exist at arbitrary wavelengths. At 1442 UTC, 5 minutes before full activation, 3 I/Atlas responds. Every telescope aimed at the object detects simultaneous activation of contact array alpha. The lights that have been pulsing for 8 months suddenly coalesce into a single brilliant beam, focused and aimed directly at Earth with such intensity that ground-based observers report seeing it as a new star visible in daylight. The energy output spikes to levels that trigger safety warnings. Detecting coherent radiation beam carrying approximately 40 petawatts, 40 quadrillion watts, focused to less than 100 kilometer diameter Earth distance. If that beam touches the surface, it would vaporize everything in its path. But the beam doesn't touch the surface. It terminates in the upper atmosphere, 340 kilometers above CERN, absorbed by something that appears in Earth's exosphere at 1443 UTC. The secondary objects, those 14 monitoring stations scattered throughout our solar system, activate simultaneously, each generating similar beams aimed at the same point above Switzerland. You're watching 7 beams converging from different angles, meeting at a single point in space, and where they intersect, Reality tears open. Not metaphorically, literally. Space itself splits like fabric under tension, opening into something that hurts to look at directly, something the camera feeds can't properly capture because it exists in dimensions your visual processing can't interpret. At 1447 UTC exactly, Gateway reaches full power and the portal completes, and something begins coming through from the other side. The first thing through the portal isn't physical. It's information a data stream so dense and complex that it overloads every receiver pointed at the tear in space above CERN. At 1447.03 UTC, radio telescopes from California to Australia detect a transmission spike measuring 847 petabytes per second. For context, that's roughly equivalent to downloading the entire digital content of human civilization, every book, every movie, every scientific paper ever written in under 2 seconds. Doctor. Raymond Choi's decryption team watches their systems crash and reboot 3 times before they implement emergency data compression protocols just to capture a fraction of what's flowing through. What's in that data stream? The preliminary analysis completed at 1534 UTC reveals something that makes you question everything you thought you understood about the universe. It's a star map, not of our galaxy, not of nearby star systems. It's a comprehensive map of 2.4 million galaxies spanning 8 billion light-years of observable space. Each galaxy tagged with data signatures indicating technological civilizations, not potentially habitable planets, confirmed technological signatures, radio emissions, heat patterns, atmospheric compositions consistent with industrial activity. The map shows 847,000 active technological civilizations scattered across the visible universe. You're looking at proof that not only are we not alone, we're outnumbered beyond comprehension. But the map contains something more unsettling. Each civilization is color-coded by a classification system that takes the team 47 minutes to decode. Doctor. Sarah Chen's preliminary report states, the classification appears to be developmental stage assessment. Categories range from Level 1 basic tool use and agriculture through Level 8 galaxy-spanning civilizations with faster-than-light capability and quantum manipulation technology. Earth is classified as Level 2.7, somewhere between Industrial Revolution and Early Space Age. We are not the youngest civilization in this map. There are 34,000 civilizations rated below us. But we're nowhere near the top. Over 400,000 civilizations are rated Level 5 or higher. At 1452 UTC, 9 minutes into full activation, something physical begins materializing in the gateway chamber. It starts as a geometric shimmer angles that don't align with 3-dimensional space. Surfaces that face directions that shouldn't exist. The monitoring team watches in silence as the object resolves into something vaguely spherical but wrong, composed of what looks like liquid metal that holds impossible shapes without flowing. The sphere measures approximately 1.4 meters in diameter, floating 2 meters above the chamber floor with no visible support. Doctor. Eleanor Vasquez's immediate reaction, caught on the control room recording. It's not obeying local gravity. We're looking at either anti-gravity technology or mass negation. Either way, we've just received technology that violates our understanding of fundamental forces. The sphere doesn't speak, not in any conventional sense. At 1458 UTC, it begins projecting holographic information directly into the chamber space. 3-dimensional displays showing instructions, assembly diagrams, mathematical proofs, energy formulas. It's teaching us, transmitting information at a pace that suggests it knows exactly how fast human cognition can process new concepts. Dr. Marcus Webb, watching from the monitoring station, describes it in his log. It's like watching someone slowly explain quantum mechanics to a child, adjusting the explanation in real time based on comprehension feedback. Except with a child, and the subject is technology centuries beyond our current capability. The information includes blueprints for 3 devices. The first, an improved power generation system using controlled fusion with magnetic confinement configurations we've never attempted. The second, a propulsion system based on those gravity manipulation principles 3I/Atlas demonstrated. The third something the translation algorithms struggle to label. The closest approximation is existence filter or reality selector. The purpose becomes clear as more data flows through. It's a device that allows observation of parallel quantum states, essentially letting you see the roads not taken, the possibilities that collapsed when quantum wave functions resolved into the reality we experience. Why would they give us this? What's the purpose of showing us what might have been at 1511? UTC 24 minutes into activation, Dr. Jennifer Kowalski notices something in the gravitational wave data that makes her interrupt the main observation channel. The portal is growing. Initial diameter was 2 meters. Current diameter is 3.8 meters and expanding at 8 centimeters per minute. At this rate, it will exceed the chamber dimensions in 43 minutes. The implications hit everyone simultaneously if the portal continues expanding beyond the containment chamber. Beyond the facility, you're looking at a tear in space-time opening above one of the most densely populated regions of Europe. Doctor. Vasquez immediately queries the sphere through the data interface, portal expansion, controlled safety parameters. The response comes instantly, projected as text in 47 different human languages simultaneously. Expansion nominal. Gateway dimensions scale to information transfer requirements. Maximum diameter 840 meters. Duration 47 minutes from full activation. Portal closure automatic. No intervention required. No danger to local space-time stability. That should be reassuring, but you're reading a message from an intelligence sophisticated enough to instantly translate into every major Earth language, casually discussing ripping an 840-meter hole in reality and asking you to trust that everything is under control. At 1523 UTC, the sphere releases something smaller, dozens of objects that look like metallic seeds, each one about the size of a golf ball, floating out of the portal and distributing themselves throughout the chamber. Doctor. Alexei Volkov's initial scan reveals they're not solid. They're shells containing compressed information stored in quantum states, data storage at densities that would make current flash drives look like stone tablets. One of these seeds, according to preliminary estimates, could store the equivalent of 400 exabytes, roughly 40% of all data generated by human civilization annually. And there are 127 of them floating in the chamber, each one a library of information waiting to be decoded. At 1534 UTC, the transmission from 3I/Atlas changes. The mathematical light pulses that had been running for 8 months suddenly encode a new message, decoded within minutes. Observation period concluded, classification confirmed. Humanity assessed as developmentally ready for contact protocol. Gamma. Technology transfer authorized. Integration timeline. 847 years to full civilization compatibility. Immediate transfer fusion power. Gravity manipulation. Quantum communication. Secondary transfer pending stability assessment. 847 years. They're looking at humanity's development on timescales that span centuries. This isn't first contact between civilizations meeting as equals. This is something closer to a cosmic mentorship program, a technological civilization so advanced they can afford to wait nearly a millennium for us to catch up enough to properly join whatever network connects these 847,000 civilizations across the universe. Doctor. Lisa Park's analysis. Transmitted to world leaders at 1602 UTC. We are being uplifted, given technology to accelerate our development. The question is not whether we accept the information is already here, the seeds are already distributed. The question is what we do with knowledge that took other civilizations thousands of years to develop, handed to us in 47 minutes. At 1547 UTC, exactly 60 minutes into activation, the portal begins contracting. The energy beams from 3/Atlas and the 14 monitoring stations cut off simultaneously. The tear in space above CERN seals itself, reality knitting back together as if it was never disrupted. The sphere remains, still floating in the chamber, still projecting information. The 127 seeds remain, distributed and waiting. Gateway powers down automatically, the crystals fading from their blue glow, the superconducting ceramics warming back to room temperature. The entire event lasted precisely 47 minutes, the same duration specified in the original transmission back in December. But 3/Atlas doesn't leave. At 1615 UTC, it performs another course correction, this time increasing velocity, beginning its departure from the solar system. The trajectory takes it on a path that will bring it past Neptune's orbit, then into interstellar space, accelerating to speeds that will carry it toward Proxima Centauri, one of the coordinates it transmitted back in October. It's not staying to supervise, it's continuing its mission, moving to the next star system, the next potentially technological civilization, carrying its message and its gifts across the galaxy. Doctor. Sarah Chen sits in the control room at 1647 UTC, exactly 2 hours after activation began, and speaks into the official log. Project Gateway is concluded. First contact has been achieved. The data transfer is complete. Humanity is no longer alone in the universe we never were. We've been under observation for centuries, maybe millennia, by civilizations so advanced they can afford patience measured in centuries. They've given us the keys to technologies that will transform everything: unlimited clean energy, interplanetary travel, communication across cosmic distances. But they've also shown us how far we have to go. We are children who've just learned the universe is full of adults, and they're willing to teach us if we're willing to learn. The 127 seeds get distributed to research facilities across 23 countries over the next week. Each one contains enough information to occupy thousands of scientists for decades. The fusion power specifications alone could solve Earth's energy crisis within a generation. The gravity manipulation principles could enable missions to Mars, to the outer planets, to the stars themselves. The quantum communication protocols could connect humanity across solar systems without the limitations of light speed delay. But buried in the data from Seed 47 discovered on June 18th by a team at MIT is something that changes the entire context of what just happened. It's a timeline, a comprehensive record showing that 3/Atlas visited our solar system once before, in 1908 when something exploded over Tunguska, Siberia, with the force of 185 Hiroshima bombs. The official explanation has always been a meteor or comet impact. But no crater was ever found. The data from Seed 47 shows it was 3/Atlas performing a close-range planetary scan, its propulsion system interacting with Earth's atmosphere in ways that created the explosion. They've been watching us since before we split the atom, before we reached space, waiting to see if we'd destroy ourselves or develop enough stability to be worth contacting. And here's the detail that keeps you awake. The timeline shows 37 other technological civilizations were also contacted. 11 responded like we did, built the device, accepted the transfer, and are now part of the network spanning the galaxy. 26 didn't respond. Their civilizations no longer exist, destroyed by climate catastrophe, nuclear war, or resource exhaustion before they could develop enough to join the larger community. First contact wasn't just about communication. It was a test, a filter, and humanity just barely passed. The question now isn't whether we're alone or whether we're being watched. The question is what we do with the knowledge we've been given, the technology we've received, and the 847 years of development that separate us from full membership in a cosmic civilization we're only beginning to understand. Because 3 months ago, as Dr. Chen's classified addendum notes, another interstellar object changed course and began accelerating toward a different star system with planets that might host life. The network is expanding. The observation continues, and somewhere out there, another civilization is about to discover lights in the sky that will change everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe.